For most of modern history, military power followed a simple and seemingly unbreakable rule. The side with the most expensive weapons usually won. Nations invested billions into tanks, aircraft, ships, and missile systems because cost was directly associated with capability. Expensive meant advanced. Advanced meant dominant. This logic shaped doctrines, alliances, and global security for decades. Heavy armor rolled across battlefields as symbols of power. Fighter jets ruled the skies. Warships projected influence across oceans. These platforms were not just weapons, they were statements. They demonstrated industrial strength, technological superiority, and political resolve. War was expensive, and winning it required even greater expense. But in recent years, this logic has begun to erode. Not slowly, but decisively. A single category of weapon, cheap by military standards, has fundamentally altered how wars are fought, planned, and survived. It did not arrive with fanfare or official doctrine. It emerged quietly, almost accidentally, and then spread faster than military institutions could adapt. That weapon was the drone. To understand why drones changed warfare forever, it is necessary to understand the assumptions they shattered. Traditional military systems are built around survivability. Tanks rely on armor. Aircraft rely on speed and altitude. Warships rely on layered defenses. All of these systems are expensive because they must survive direct confrontation. They are designed to endure the battlefield. Drones introduced a different philosophy. They did not need to survive. They only needed to function long enough to observe, guide, or strike. Their value was not in durability, but in replaceability. This single shift altered the entire cost equation of war. At first, drones were not considered weapons at all. They were tools. Civilian drones were used for photography, agriculture, mapping, and recreation. They were small, lightweight, commercially available, and cheap. Anyone could buy one. No military training was required. No complex infrastructure was needed. Early military planners saw them as toys. They were slow, fragile, and carried no significant payload. Compared to jets or missiles, they seemed irrelevant. But what they lacked in power, they compensated for in numbers and accessibility. The first major change came with reconnaissance. Drones provided something that had always been expensive and difficult: persistent aerial surveillance. Satellites were costly and limited. Manned aircraft were risky and resource-intensive. Drones filled the gap. They could hover, observe, and transmit real-time information at a fraction of the cost. This alone was transformative. Knowing where the enemy is has always been one of the most decisive advantages in war. Drones made that knowledge cheap and continuous. Units no longer operated blindly. Movement, once safe under concealment, became visible. Positions that relied on terrain or distance were suddenly exposed. But surveillance was only the beginning. Once information could be gathered cheaply, it could also be exploited cheaply. Drones began to guide artillery fire. Instead of firing blindly, forces could adjust shots in real time. Accuracy increased dramatically. Ammunition was used more efficiently. Targets that once required large barrages could now be neutralized with precision. Then came weaponization. Small explosives were attached to drones. At first, these were crude adaptations. Limited range, limited damage. But they were effective. A cheap drone could disable a vehicle, destroy equipment, or force soldiers to abandon positions. Each success encouraged further experimentation. Soon, drones were not just observers or delivery platforms. They became integrated into the kill chain. They found targets, tracked them, and coordinated strikes with other systems. The battlefield became transparent in ways it never had been before. This is where cost becomes decisive. A modern tank can cost several $1 million. Its crew requires years of training. Its maintenance requires logistics, fuel, spare parts, and secure supply lines. Losing one is not just a tactical loss, it is a strategic and economic one. A drone, by contrast, may cost a few hundred or a few $1,000s. It can be operated with minimal training. It can be replaced almost instantly. Losing one has little consequence. This asymmetry creates a new reality. Expensive systems must be protected from cheap threats. Defenders are forced to invest in countermeasures, air defenses, electronic warfare, and constant vigilance. Attackers, meanwhile, can afford to lose dozens of drones without hesitation. The result is economic pressure. Defending becomes more expensive than attacking. Every interception costs more than the drone it stops. Every moment of readiness consumes resources. Over time, this imbalance exhausts even the most well-funded forces. Traditional air defenses were not designed for this environment. They were built to counter aircraft and missiles, not swarms of small, low-flying objects. Radar systems struggle to detect them. Missiles designed to destroy jets are inefficient against targets that cost a fraction of the interceptor. Electronic warfare offers some protection, but it is not absolute. Jamming has limits. Signal interference can be overcome. And as drone technology evolves, so do countermeasures. Armor faces a similar challenge. Tanks were designed to withstand direct fire from other armored vehicles. They were not designed to be constantly observed from above. Top-down attacks exploit weaker armor. Precision guidance negates the advantage of thick plating. As a result, tanks must now operate differently. They require escort, concealment, and integration with air defense and electronic systems. Their freedom of movement is reduced. Their role is changing. This does not mean tanks are obsolete. It means their dominance is no longer guaranteed. The same applies across the battlefield. Expensive platforms are still powerful, but they are no longer untouchable. Their survival depends on networks, coordination, and adaptation, rather than raw strength. Cheap weapons accelerate learning. Because drones are inexpensive, tactics can be tested rapidly. Failures are acceptable. Successes are replicated immediately. This speed of adaptation favors agile forces over rigid institutions. Smaller groups can innovate faster than large bureaucracies. They can modify hardware, adjust tactics, and deploy new solutions in days rather than years. In modern warfare, this speed matters more than perfection. The psychological impact is also significant. Constant surveillance creates stress. Knowing that the sky is always watching changes behavior. Movement becomes cautious. Concentration becomes risky. Even when no attack occurs, the presence of drones alters decision-making. This persistent pressure degrades morale and effectiveness. It forces defenders to disperse, hide, and limit activity. Cheap weapons achieve effects that once required overwhelming force. The strategic implications are profound. Military power is no longer defined solely by industrial capacity. It is shaped by adaptability, innovation, and cost efficiency. Wealth still matters, but it is no longer decisive on its own. Nations are responding. Investments in counter-drone systems are increasing. New doctrines are emerging. Camouflage, deception, and electronic protection are regaining importance. The battlefield is becoming a contest of awareness rather than armor. But adaptation is uneven. Large systems take time to change. Legacy platforms cannot be redesigned overnight. Meanwhile, cheap weapons continue to evolve, becoming faster, smarter, and more autonomous. This creates a period of instability. Old assumptions no longer apply, but new ones are not yet fully established. In this space, cheap weapons exert disproportionate influence. The lesson is clear. The most dangerous weapon in modern warfare is not necessarily the most powerful. It is the one that changes the rules. Drones did not replace tanks, aircraft, or ships. They redefined how those systems must be used. They exposed vulnerabilities that could no longer hide. They shifted the balance from protection to awareness, from dominance to survival. One cheap weapon changed warfare forever, not by overwhelming force, but by relentless pressure, by being everywhere, by being replaceable, by turning cost into a weapon of its own. In the wars of the future, victory will not belong to those who spend the most, but to those who adapt the fastest. And in that environment, cheap weapons will continue to shape outcomes far beyond their price.